So surprised.
I was going to say, we're not surprised this week, and then we both got quite surprised. So just accept the surprise every single week. Hello.
And are you recording it?
I am recording. Right, I'm just going to show. Yes, I am recording. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. We're getting there. That's exciting.
How marvellous. Do you know, I got a comment last week that I look like Elton John.
I
love that. It's my night look.
It is your night look. You're as in KN, because he is Sir Elton. So KNIGHT, or just nightlife look.
I can be a night like Elton John. I tell you what, we're going to talk about stress and anxiety, and like you and I have been working like a pair of Trojans. Let's do this. And I go to bed, and if I don't wear these glasses, these are designed to take out the blue light from the screens that I spend way too much time on. And we shall talk about this. It helps me sleep. Because yes. I'm in Spain, I'm an hour ahead of you. So by the time we finish this, it gets close to bedtime.
I have a pair of those, and I always leave them upstairs.
Oh, do you? I've massively been wearing mine quite a lot over lockdown.
I know you have. I'm slightly distracted. My partner forgot his water bottle. He's literally walking in like this, silently, so he doesn't end up on the screen. Like, ruined my life there. So excuse me being distracted. I'm just pulling up our
comments and bits and pieces.
Our comments, I don't want to miss them. So yes, we are going to talk a bit about stress. I'm going to make a few notes actually, because you make a good point. Yes, so my glasses are upstairs, but I tell you why they're upstairs. If I'm ever like wanting to watch something later at night on my laptop upstairs. So let's talk about, firstly, there is an awful lot of lockdown fatigue. There's an awful lot of fear and anxiety.
Yep. When you say fatigue, you mean just fed up? I'm picking up on a lot of frustration with it. A lot of
undoneness. So anxiety.
Yes.
Stress and overwhelm.
Oh.
And then I want to talk about, so we were going to do hints and tips around stress and overwhelm. I feel like this could have been a pre-meeting. Stress and overwhelm.
Yeah.
Anyone who's watching, if you have any comments and there's anything, burnout, lovely. Like, so hi, Debbie, do you mean like lockdown burnout or in general adrenal fatigue burnout? So if you let us know that, because we can go into that. And then part of the fatigue was also a giving upness. So you've replied yes, Debbie, but like general, lockdown burnout.
Lockdown burnout.
Lockdown burnout, yeah. So, and then let's talk about as well the fact that people are just so over it all that actually now there's an I can't be bothered with the exercise, with eating right, because we, go on about PFC, and actually there's a lot of people going, I just can't be asked.
We noticed this, that actually when we noticed this in the last Facebook Live we did, when we were talking about the emotional stuff, we got quite a lot of interest and engagement. And then when we were talking about the PFC, that dropped off, and we were like, okay, what's going on there? And we had a conversation about, the real feeling that we're picking up from our clients and our students is, we're fed up, and actually I don't want to be told what I should be doing. So one of the things that we may talk about is how, when we're feeling really low and frustrated and fed up, is there a way that we can eat that feels like we're, treating ourselves, or we're having we're enjoying our food, comfort food, but we're still doing it in a way that supports our hormones. So I think that was something else. You're making more notes.
Yeah, I'm making notes.
Well
You look nerdy. It's really interesting, isn't it? I've we've been so busy these past few weeks, haven't we? You with your orange glasses.
and jumper to match.
Me with my general glasses, although I'm also trialing a one contact lens from the weird eye. And then the other morning I was actually too stressed to even get the bloody contact lens in. It was awful. So here I am still with my glasses, not with my actual contact lenses. No, I don't need them right now. We've been so busy these past couple of weeks, and I actually have noticed how this is probably the least engaged with my food I have been for years. So part of that is probably lockdown fatigue. Like, I mean, we can't go anywhere. I'm wearing pajamas all the time. Why does it matter if I can fit my skirt or not?
There's no hope of a bikini holiday.
Oh my Lord. Although I did work really hard to get into my clothes after my hormone weight gain, so I don't want to go back there. But also, we've just been so busy, and usually we're busy, but in a way that I can kind of go, right, I can plan my food, I can think about it. I mean, it's just been insanely busy and not had that chance at all. So I've noticed food habits creeping in for me, which are slightly more unusual. I'm going to be honest, they're still PFC. They're still pretty good, and it's clean food. But I've noticed that can't be bothered. Grab something easy, grab something quick.
One of the amazing things that we came up with for our holding space was the behavioral substructures, looking at what's underneath behavior. And that fed up feeling is quite a top level emotion. There's usually something going on underneath it. And what I've been picking up from students and people that I've been working with is that underneath that fed upness is quite a low level frustration. And
I don't think it's low level. I think it's absolutely
high level,
like high level frustration, restricted, the amount of sacrifice. Actually, like a lot of people have sacrificed huge amounts. Actually, this is something I want to talk about. People have sacrificed huge amounts. A lot of people have lost people, have been really unwell themselves. And I don't in any way want to diminish the challenges that brings. People have lost jobs, people have lost everything. But I know people where they haven't necessarily lost jobs, lost people, been very, very unwell. And they also have been going, oh my God, I'm really struggling. And then saying, but I shouldn't complain, I shouldn't complain. Now, there's one thing to live in an attitude of gratitude, and there's another thing to say, I don't have anything to complain about. Because so I've started going, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, we do, because we're all living through a pandemic. We're all living through massive amounts of restriction where we can't, it's not even that we can't even travel abroad. We can't go to the next town, you know, when massive amounts of restriction. So whilst for some people, yes, it's going to be catastrophic, for other people, less so. It doesn't mean that the less so doesn't feel impacted. So we can't, I think that sitting in comparisons is actually quite unhelpful, because we stop believing that we're allowed to feel this frustration.
And this is what we like to do in ourselves, and what we like to talk about is when we have those behaviors of, oh, I can't be bothered to exercise, I can't be bothered to eat right, I feel really like, that's that kind of top level. If we can go underneath it and go, actually, the feeling that is driving this behavior, this driving this apathy, is this frustration. There's the truth. Now, what do I do with the frustration? And like frustration and anger is one of my favorite things to work with, because I spent so many years not having any kind of relationship with that side of myself. And when I discovered that actually coming into, rather than ignoring frustration, because that's what can happen, that's the eating the shit food and not moving our bodies and feeling really ick and feeling really frustrated, but sitting in it and stewing in it. When I discovered that actually I was empowered to do something about this feeling, a lot changed for me.
Yeah.
So and that is something that I think we might have talked about last Wednesday, is like when we feel stuck, the thing that is needed is to move.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be, I think the difficulty that we've got going through lockdown is that there is so much, and this is maybe why people are switching off to us talking about PFC, is there's so many you should be doing this. You have to do this, you must do this, you should do this. And the part of us that is like, oh, I just want to rebel against that. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do that. That's the part of us that is reaching for the chocolate bar or the bottle or glass of wine in the evening. And so when I talk about movement, yes, it's great to do exercise, but I don't want to should anyone, because it just isn't going to help. So moving in a way that feels pleasurable, like dancing or shaking or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be something that is particularly staged, because again, that's that feeling of, well, I should be doing exercise. And
Yeah, the problem is though, like I know for me, that if I'm in quite a low place, that stewy feeling, I don't even want something pleasurable. I don't want anything at all. Stagnant. I feel stagnant. And shake it up. I don't want to.
Cross with the stagnancy. But I mean,
it's got to the point through years of discipline, I suppose. And actually, no, not even true. Not even the years of discipline. The sudden relief and joy at not having chronic fatigue anymore. That these days, if I'm feeling stagnant, I can go, I'm going to go out on my bike. Oh, I'm going to do. I did it earlier. I was really kind of like overwhelmed and lots on and stuff happening. And I was like, haven't got long. I've got to put dinner on because I've got to have it done for the live and da da da. And I went, right, quickly, Claire, stop thinking about it. Just go and do a body pump class. Just go do it over there. Just get on with it. And then I felt so much better. But some days it's just no.
But then that's where the awareness comes from, of okay, what's really going on here, when we've got that witness that is able to look at the situation that we're in. So you're able to go, wow, I'm in a really stewy, miserable, goddamn awful place. And then looking at the, right, what's my tools here?
Yeah, and also the not judging it. Like, it's okay to sometimes be in that place. And it's okay. Sometimes my partner's, gone out on a dog walk. I'm a responsible dog owner. So even in whatever mood, you take your dog out for a walk, I'm going, don't want to go, going to be miserable. I actually said to my daughter yesterday, we went for a bike ride, and I went, I'm going to be miserable. I'm in a very miserable mood today. And then as soon as we started cycling, we get to the farm shop. Went to buy some broccoli. This is my whole day yesterday. We get to the farm shop and I'm like cheering, we're chatting, and I'm like, oh no, I cheered up. But I'd allowed myself permission to go, I'm miserable today. I'm just really stagnant and I'm just fed up. And I'm out. But okay, we're on a bike ride. And so it's the permission to say no. And actually, had she not wanted to go on a bike ride, I wouldn't have done. But I'm trying to be encouraging and get her moving because she's a teenager stuck in front of the screen. Isn't it interesting? We give ourselves permission and then suddenly it can change.
Mm-hmm.
That's historically, I'm not allowed to feel like this. I'm not allowed to feel like this.
I've just written this for a part of our course that we're developing at the moment about the cycles of female hormones. When we look at the month cycle that a woman goes through from menstruation through to ovulation and then back round again. And that time, that pre-bleed, which a lot of women, that PMT mood, a lot of women try and control, or sometimes don't try and control, just let people have it. But it's a wonderful time of the month to be able to get really, really truthful with what's going on.
Yeah.
And when we allow ourselves to feel what we need to feel at different times of our month. So we recommend around when we're on our bleed, resting, deep resting. If we get the opportunity to just allow ourselves to let go and drop, then we find that we have a lot more energy later on the month. But that pre-bleed, if we allow ourselves to be in that frustration and we find healthy ways of being able to work with it and deal with it, then by the time we are able to, because actually women are just amazing creatures, that once a month we get this opportunity to detox. It's a massive detox. So if we're able to process our emotions, that's what's going on in our bodies with our hormones. It's that big buildup. If we can really process it and then bleed it out, we got a clear month the next month. So we won't feel so a month later.
The whole premise back in the day of being ousted from the village. And of course, as modern day feminists, we go, oh, that's awful. And, you know, we were unclean. All right, take away the words from it. But actually, for that week, women didn't cook. There were other women in the tent, the elders, to look after the children. The women who were bleeding got to sit around and talk about the issues that they were having with their partners. I mean, this is kind of, I would have loved that on my bleed, just to hang out with other women, be brought food.
Yeah.
But this is something we talk about, particularly with PMDD or really bad PMT or a lot of cycle issues, is really allowing yourself to drop in that time, in that, we call it winter, that particular time, allowing yourself the space, even if it's just for an hour. You teach your kids, do you know what? Mummy's wintering for an hour, just 1 hour, just 1 hour of focused, conscious time where I'm going to bleed.
Mummy's wintering. I am going to use that.
One of my clients, her, I can't remember her son or her daughter, actually made her a little sign for her to hang on her door.
Mummy's wintering. I tell you what, you're going to have a much better month with mummy if mummy's allowed to winter.
Exactly. And actually for a lot of women, this is one of the, and I'm not diminishing again PMDD, but having this real consciousness around our energy and our bleed can make a huge difference to PMDD. So a couple of comments. Nikki, yes, allowing ourselves to be miserable, simply allowing it can bring freedom from it. Exactly. Because, and this is one of my favorite quotes, is that the source of human suffering is when we are unable to be with what is. It's the conflict of, there is this thing, but I want it to be different. That is actually the source of human suffering. So when we have what is, then there's a truth around it. Okay, so I'm miserable. Okay, so what am I going to do with that? So maybe it's my child's birthday and I kind of feel like I need to be more, or I could actually just be as I am, but I don't have to take anyone down with me. I don't have to pretend. I can just be. It's just that often when we're railroading over ourselves, that's when we're grouchy. That's when I used to be really, really grouchy. My experience of when I'm in not a particularly great mood, I might be a little bit more quiet, but I'm not grumpy at anybody. So even if there's some big celebration, so you're a bit more quiet. It's all right. There's probably loads of other noise going on. Really,
When we see the energy, like emotion is just energy that is moving through, and it's a bit like the weather. And when we feel, oh my God, today I feel really low, allowing ourselves to go in that or process it or be with it, or I'm feeling really frustrated. How can I move this through the body? Like you said, you moved your body and the grump moved.
And the grunt moved.
It's acknowledging where we're at and then allowing it to move through.
Yes. So sometimes I know from me, chronic history of chronic fatigue and also history of just not really enjoying exercise, which has changed in the last couple of years. There was also nothing I want less right now than to get out of bed. What I've learned to do to cultivate a change in that is to allow myself to have a culture of curiosity. I wonder how it would be if I actually just did something to move my body. So it might just be, I'm just going to take the dog out for a walk. And then actually, I feel a bit more perky. Well, maybe I want to get on my static bike. So it's this constant asking questions of myself rather than going to do a really hard HIIT class at 10 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I really like that in the summer. These days, I'm kind of waking up going, not feeling it, lockdown fatigue, lots of work on. And I don't really feel in my body the desire to move until I've been sat working and stagnant all day. And then I go, gosh, I want to move my body. So rather than beating myself up because I didn't do the workout then and being with what's true, then we're in flow, and then something different has the opportunity to come in if we stay curious. And actually this morning I said to myself, it's not going to be an exercise day today. I got woken up by my dog in the middle of the night, couldn't get back to sleep. It's not going to be an exercise day today. Guess what? At the right time, with curiosity, it was. And yes, I'd signed up, I'd done a body pump online class, but I could have stopped halfway through if I wanted to. It's like giving ourselves permission.
This is something I've really had to learn, is not being in absolutes. So when I wake up and I am in a foul mood and today is going to be shit and that is it, it's like you said, that allowing, okay, in this moment, this is how I feel. Things can change. Things do change. Allowing things to change.
Yes. Curiosity. Yes. Jane's just said, I love that word, curiosity. It's underused. It is. And it's something I used to be very much in absolutes and also very controlling. I knew how I wanted something to be. So then when it wasn't conflict, but actually how can I just learn to be comfortable with being curious and then allowing something to surprise us and to unfold? And how gorgeous.
There's something I wrote down on my notepad, is the need for control. And we got the opportunity to talk about that. Are you going to answer a question?
Yeah, because we've actually got a question which was probably quite part of.
I'm going to highlight it. I'll come back to it.
So with the whole lockdown burnout thing, so it feels like it's kind of tied in. The fear of going back to normal when actually you get into quite a good routine being at home in lockdown, getting back to life might feel quite strange. So this is all around control, isn't it?
Yeah. Anxiety is a really old friend of mine. So I've found lots of different ways of how I can be with fear and anxiety, and understanding that it is a part of me that is not something that needs rejection or needs for me to get over. It's a part of me that is needing something. And so when we look at fear and anxiety, it needs containment. And there is something like the comment that you've just read out, that there's something quite cradling about lockdown, that we are, that restriction can be very frustrating, but there's also a cocoon that's happening, that kind of bubble that it's keeping us in. And a lot of the fear and anxiety that is being driven at the moment is, what's going to happen when that's gone? What's on the other side of this? And that's the fear of the unknown. And so what I've really learned to cultivate in myself is, when I feel fear and anxiety, and I understand that it is a part of me that is needing some kind of containment, I'm able to start having a conversation with that part of myself and using very soothing language. And again, it's a curiosity. So there's a side of me. Curiosity is not fear. Fear is not curious. Fear just wants things to be safe. Curiosity comes from more of a creative place. So when I feel fear, the part of me that is able to be gentle and to hold and to be loving and to be non-judgmental, because I used to be so judgmental of my fear. I shouldn't be feeling this. I need to get over this. This anxiety is controlling me. It's ruining my life. I need to stop feeling this way. When I started to come with a gentleness to my fear and to listen to it, okay, what's going on? One of my favorite questions for fear is, what's the worst that's going to happen? What are you really frightened of? And that is an exploration that usually takes me into really weird and wonderful places, but it gives me such an insight to what's going on. And this can really happen. So if we are, so with the lockdown, so say, for example, we have that questioning, okay, I'm scared about coming out of lockdown. Okay, what's the worst that's going to happen? Okay, I am going to have to go back to the office, or I'm going to get COVID, or I am going to become stressed again, because there's a reality that a lot of people have stripped away a lot of their life and realized, actually, I'm a calmer person. I get to spend more time with my family, or I get to spend more time with me. What if I go back to the craziness that was my life? Okay, so I'm scared about becoming overwhelmed again. Okay, what's the worst that's going to happen about becoming overwhelmed again? Well, I'm going to be stressed, and I'm not going to have any time for myself. Okay, so if we keep going through that questioning process with ourselves, and we can do this with a therapist, we can do this with journaling, we can do this in our heads, and we get down to those core, okay, what's really going on here? What are you really frightened of? I'm frightened of getting COVID. Okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen about getting COVID? I mean, these are big questions. Can we answer those from a place of truth? Because when we start to really understand what is fear trying to tell us, fear is just trying to keep us safe. That is what it's trying to do. So when we have a relationship with fear and a communication with fear, then we can start to be able to work with it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I really liked what you were saying about what's the worst that's going to happen, because it's a great question, isn't it? And so it's, well, I could die. And we always say, actually, well, there's actually psychological evidence which isn't that our biggest fear isn't that we're going to die, because we know that. It's one of my favorite lines, actually, from a play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, which was, I never remember being told that I would die. It's like we just inherently know. So death is traumatic. It is, very distressing for the people going through it, dying. I mean, that's just a generalization. It's not for everybody. Sometimes it's beautiful and it's end of life and it's perfect. But it's distressing for the family members. It's distressing for friends. It's a distressing part of the human experience. There is nothing that can take that away, but it's an essential part of the human experience. So essentially it is to be born. It's essential also, it's going to happen, it's going to die. And we have lost touch with, our favorite virologist, Zach Bush, talks about this, how we have lost touch with the beautiful moment where we've become to fear it so much, but we've lost sense of the beautiful moment where he calls it, let go of this particle moment, where we're expressing ourselves as being human, where we take flight into different form, because we only see the now, and so we're stuck in that place. So I was always taught with NLP and a lot of the psychological models that I trained in, that it's not the fear of death that is the last thing. Actually, the real fear there might be, but what about my children? What about this? What about that? Okay. So of course the obvious answer to you might be, well, I'm scared I might die. No, go deeper than that, because actually that is not your worst fear. It would be, my children will be alone, this, that, the other. So we actually had an interesting situation. We've all had the COVIDs, and my mum and dad also had COVID, and they are in their 70s. My mum is fit as a fiddle, and my dad has been incredibly unwell for the last decade, maybe more. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure how he is still here. I say this to his face. I literally said it to him earlier. And so he's been shielded, and then he got COVID back at middle of January. And I honestly thought, we've got 6 days and he's going to die. And he didn't. He actually bounced back after 3 days, which was the weirdest thing, because he has COPD. But the bit that was suddenly brought everything into focus was my mum got unwell. And I remember saying to you, my mum's unwell. Oh my gosh. My mum is a matriarch. She deals with, all the stuff with my dad. They run a business. They still run a business in their 70s, dogs and stuff. And I just went, wow, what happens if my mum dies? Like, oh my goodness, there is suddenly a lot of stuff. And you know what? I called her when she started to get unwell and went, Mum, this has made me, and I was unwell at the time, when this has made me realize that there are some big conversations that you and I need to have, because we've all been expecting dad, we've all prepared for that. None of us have prepared for you not being here. And actually, you are now the key person holding an awful lot of things together. And I need to make sure that I'm prepared if anything happens to you, that your staff, that everything, there's a smooth transition. So, ironically, and the reason that one of the things that we're so passionate about doing work with fear and anxiety, the reason I told you this long-winded story, is the most beautiful thing came out of her being unwell and us having the conversation about what's the worst that's going to happen. Because it made, even she said in the conversation I had with her earlier, having COVID really made me realize it's time to let go of the control of a few things. It's time to put a few more ducks in a row. It's time to actually allow some of that weight off of my shoulders. It's time. And so by being able to get close up to what scares us, actually doesn't it bring some relief in life? That's been my experience every single time.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we feel passionately about is not looking at something as good or bad.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be very easy for us to look at the COVID situation, the lockdown situation, the economic situation, the humanity situation of it, and go, this is something terrible. And then listening to the story that you've just told is when we are able to just see something as something is happening, rather than to put a judgment or a label on it that this is good or this is bad, then something miraculous can come of it. And so, I mean, it takes such strength to be able to trust that what is happening is as it's meant to be, that allowing something to unfold. And fear really doesn't want us to do that. Fear wants to control every single detail, wants to know what's going to happen in the future, wants to be prepared for everything that's going to happen in the future. And the difficulty with that is it's impossible to do, which makes fear go nuts.
Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because Brené Brown talks about this, that actually it's not just the strength of knowing that you can deal with whatever happens. It's the, wow, I'm feeling some fear. This is where we talk about fear and anxiety being a superpower. Because when my mum started to get unwell, I went, okay, mental checklist. What do I do about my dad? He's just had a new diagnosis. What do I do about their business? Because that something needs to happen there. What do I do about this? They've got dogs. Okay, so in my head, mental checklist. But it then takes, in the words of Brené Brown, courage to actually take that conversation without my fear, but just actually, it was so observational. Mum, we need to have a conversation because this, and this. So courage, Brené Brown says that courage comes from the French, courage, from the heart. So when we have this, it's living wholeheartedly. I feel this thing, I can act upon it. And this is where fear and anxiety are actually our superpowers when we act on them. It's when we don't act on them or don't listen to them that then they start.
And I want to take that further, because a lot of people can act on fear and anxiety from a place of fear.
Yeah.
So when we're able to identify that fear and anxiety is a part of us, and we are able, as the adult, as the conscious part of us, is able to work with, understand, okay, right, have that conversation that I was just talking about. What's the worst that's going to happen? What are you frightened of? Let's go there. It's okay. I'm holding your hand. I got you. When we're able to understand that and go, okay, this is where the fear is coming from. It's the conscious part of us, not the fear part of us. It's the conscious part of us that is able to take action. And actually, when the fear is able to see that action is coming from a loving place, from a conscious place, then the fear calms down. The fear goes, oh my God, someone's got my back. Someone's listening to me. That's a big one. And someone's doing something. Thank God.
Well, it's the observation of fear in our body. So, oh wow, I'm observing that there is something not sitting right. I'm observing there's some fear. I'm observing there's some, holy cow, good God, Mum, please don't die. There's an awful lot of ducks we've got to get in a row. That then means now if I don't act from the, oh God, my mum could die, what do I do? Panic, 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 mum, I'm so terrified. If we actually go, wow, okay, observation, something here needs to happen, then yes, the conscious part of ourselves. So we talk about this in terms of, we use the work a lot that comes from a couple of places, but from transactional analysis. I always have to say that really slowly because I find it very hard to say. Transactional analysis. And also it's used a lot in Neo-Tantra. So I know that the guru of Tantra, Osho, used a lot of this particular meditation work, which is about self-parenting. And so the theory of self-parenting is that, I mean, ultimately, we're not taught how to be adults. We're taught how to maybe be self-sufficient, but that's not actually being taught how to be an adult. And I don't think that's because many generations before, it was only in the 50s we even acknowledged there were such things as teenagers. So I don't think that people have really learned how to do it. So what I mean by that is, nobody outside of ourselves knows what we need in any given moment because nobody can see inside of us. So we're taught as kids, as babies, cry, someone will give you something. As children, we're taught, well, ask nicely, ask properly, use your big words, and it will get given to you. Say please, say thank you. As a teenager, it's, well, now you can maybe start expressing more around, well, I have an opinion, but ultimately, well, if you slam the door, you're not getting anywhere. No one ever teaches us the process of not having to conform to someone else's views, and actually society wants us to conform to their views. No one's going to teach you to be autonomous because that's not going to be serving to a school or your job or the government or whatever. So we spend our lives doing what we think someone else should do. So even in relationship, oh, how can I, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that because I'll upset them. Oh, I better make sure that I put the lid on that jar because I know how upset they get if I don't. We spend our lives doing and being what someone else needs us to be because that's how we've been taught we're going to get love. So actually the concept of self-parenting is when we learn to be able to fill ourselves with a sustainable amount of love, when we are in this self-love, huge self-love relationship, we are no longer looking outside of ourselves for love. So we're no longer prepared to give ourselves away for love or get someone else to try and fill our bowl with love. So self-parenting it's firstly, how do we fill our bowls with love ourselves? But then also secondly, because we're creating this relationship with the frightened us, we're creating a relationship with the angry, stroppy us. And this is also part of the being with what is without self-judgment, because when we are just so truly in love with who we are, I'm not going to get cross with myself because I'm having a tired day. I'm not going to beat myself up. All right, it's for put on a pound this week. I will find weeks where I feel more motivated to lose that pound. All right, that can happen. I can be in self-loving. So the other part of that is then this adult, this parent that we become to ourselves is better at making ideas, isn't looking outside of ourselves for constantly needing other people's validation and approval, But also, it's this witness, isn't it? And it's this person that goes, oh, I noticed there's some fear here. Okay. And that's exactly what you were saying of, I've got you. I'm holding your hand. Let's have this conversation. Let's be the one to bring this with love, with no judgment, and see what can be done as a win-win.
Amazing, isn't it? I think it is the thing that has been most transformational for me.
100% me too.
Self-parenting. We learnt it probably 10 years ago. And it is it is a tool that I go to again and again and again and again. It is the easiest. It's almost like a meditation, if you think about it, because it is this conversation that you have with yourself. It's this deep awareness of going inwards. But I find it the easiest meditation to be able, the easiest process to be able to work with. And it is the most effective.
And yet the irony is it's usually the hardest thing to start, because when we don't have that parent, that adult, we all avoid it because it's actually bloody hard work, because we don't want to be it. We want someone else to do it. I want someone else to do all the hard work for me. I want someone else to love me for all the, the shitty bits, so that I don't have to love the shitty bits.
Yeah. And one of the biggest difficulties that we find is when we understand that we've got these different sides of ourselves, and that there is a parent that is able to look after and care for these sides. If we've not had a blueprint of a healthy expression of an adult, then we can feel really lost with, what the heck is a loving adult? How do I even begin to harness that power to be able to look after these parts of myself that are going crazy, like fear, like anxiety, like grief, like despair? These are all parts of us that are looking to get needs met.
Yes, and then this is really interesting because it brings me back to the COVID fear, because we're in a place right now where we're being told an awful lot of things. And I'm going to start off by saying that I truly believe that everyone gets to be an autonomous adult and make their own decisions. So if I talk about vaccines, I'm not coming at this as an anti-vaxxer in any way, shape or form, because everyone has to make the right choice and decision for them. And I'm that people like my dad, I'm like, yeah, you go have the vaccine, although he's just had COVID. So I've done antibody tests because I don't want to overwhelm his body. So we're going to wait until those run out before we have the vaccine. And that's a decision we've made with his GP. So just going to say, it's really interesting observing like how much this work is needed. And this is what we discover every single time we run our courses in it, is people go, yeah, no, I feel like a little girl or a little boy showing up in the world. I feel like a terrified child. I feel like a rebellious teenager. And that's always the clue to us, where we go, right, self-parenting, that's what needs to happen here. Or I just feel like I might get told off by my partner. Right, self-parenting, because you're not meeting as equals. So what's fascinating for me is that not only has COVID shown to me how physically our health needs some serious addressing, but emotionally how our health needs some serious addressing, because, oh my goodness, the fear, the propaganda that we're seeing actually, but how easily manipulated we mostly are. And I'm not saying that requirement isn't there, because do we need to protect the NHS? Yes. Do we need to avoid as many unnecessary deaths as possible? Yes. There are basic things here that need to happen. So yes, the rules are there for a reason. However, watching the propaganda to put us into fear so that we listen to the people outside of ourselves and railroad over what we would truly believe or want, that is endemic in our society.
Yeah. It was one of the things that I wanted to talk about with helping to work with fear and anxiety, is to stop watching and reading the news, because I've really noticed since the pandemic, because I've been it's this unfolding that's been happening. I mean, we are going through history at the moment. So I became more interested in the news, and it surprised me how much
speculation.
It's so much that's totally the word I'm looking for. Speculation. It might happen. There's But why are you reporting? That's not news. That's your opinion.
And it could do this. Hang on a
Yeah.
minute.
The world could end tomorrow. Okay, right. I don't need to read that, because fear and anxiety will latch onto that because it's looking for certainty. That is what fear is looking for. And when we're looking for certainty outside of ourselves, from the news, from the media, from society, from others, from our loved ones, that is changing, especially when you're getting news that is, this might happen. That's probably going to change. So what we look at is, how do we cultivate a certainty within us? And that certainty is the constant that is us. That constant love and holding that we are able to provide for ourselves, that is what we lean into. And therefore the chaos can happen. The strength is coming from in here.
Yes, absolutely. Like, it was really interesting because so I mentioned that my mum had been quite ill, and none of us had the cough. We had, I don't know if it was a variant or just how it presented in our bodies, but we all had something different, but none of us had the cough. And my mum had like the nausea and very, very much the disorientation. And it was really interesting because she was the most unwell out of all of us for the longest. So she was really unwell for about 3 weeks. But there were a couple of days where she felt so nauseous. We'd called the doctor, got her anti-sickness. She was drinking water. She just couldn't really eat. So she's, now delighted because she lost over a stone. But she was like, she got to a point after about 10 days. And yes, she wasn't well. But like I said, spoken to the doctor. I'd called to make sure, look, she is drinking water. Are you comfortable? Yes, yes, yes. No, we're okay with that. Check back in a few days. We'd done this whole process. Like, nobody was being irresponsible here. And on about, I think it was about day 10 or 11, when she'd started to stop being so disorientated, she turned around to me. She went, am I going to get carted off to hospital? And by this point, she was starting to turn a corner. And I went, no, Mum, no, you're eating again now. It was tiny amounts, but no, why? Why are you asking if you're going to get carted off into hospital? Are you feeling more unwell? She went, no, it's just because you keep hearing about everyone dying on the news and ending up in hospital. And I said, yes, there are a lot of people dying and ending up in hospital, but that doesn't mean that you are. And my mum never thinks like that, never. But she just suddenly went into this, but the news says if I have COVID, I'm going to end up in hospital. Now, the truth is, an awful lot of people are requiring medical attention and an awful lot of people are ending up in hospital. But I found it so interesting, and I've actually seen it with a couple of clients as well. I have COVID, therefore, I am definitely going to end up in hospital and I am going to die, because that is what I am absolutely surrounded with. And yes, a lot of people have, and the human tragedy is so sad, but the mortality rate is still incredibly low. So from a health perspective, almost the worst thing that we can do is go into an illness with a belief that it's going to kill us, because we have this thing called psychoneuroimmunology, which is the connection between our psychology and our nervous system and our immune system, that will actually decide on how our immune system functions. So all of this fear is actually perpetuating people being more unwell.
Yeah, more adrenaline, more cortisol. Well, adrenaline is inflammatory, cortisol is anti-inflammatory. When our immune system is trying to deal with an infection, we don't want the body to be dealing with stress and producing cortisol, which is anti-inflammatory, when we need inflammation to be able to deal with the infection. So absolutely, if we can go into an infection and look after our bodies and have stress at the lowest it can be, then we are going to recover quicker.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to pick up on something with anxiety, because I think a lot of anxiety, like people who have anxiety are very clear, I'm an anxious person. I'm anxious. I have anxiety. Like you said, anxiety is an old friend of mine. You have had to work through some serious anxiety in quite a few different areas. Like, it's a story you know well. What I found really interesting about anxiety is I've never had anxiety, or so I thought, because I wasn't an anxious person. and I did a talk about this actually, which is on our website now, isn't it? Anxiety and coping strategies. Because I was like, I'm not anxious. I've always been quite bolshy and quite confident. I'm not anxious, until it was pointed out to me some of the symptoms of anxiety were things that I experienced and didn't know they were anxiety. So anxious to me meant someone who was maybe question their decisions, who maybe wouldn't do things because they were a bit nervous. Timidity can come with that, maybe a bit fidgety. This wasn't all, this wasn't you necessarily, but maybe
quite a few of them.
Some of them, a bit shrinking violet, a bit, that for me, I know you wouldn't believe it of her now, would you? You wouldn't believe
John, don't you know?
And you wouldn't believe it if
Got over it.
Or if MC Hammer, because she does a great MC Hammer dance.
Oh yeah.
But this timidity. So I was like, that's not me. And then I discovered that actually anxiety can present in a variety of ways, or many ways. And some of the ways are circling thoughts. And circling thoughts, I remember like planning for a big Christmas dinner, and even 6 weeks before, I'd be writing the list. I'd be checking the list, and then a few days later, I'd be writing the list again. I'd be like, I've already written that bloody list. No, I'm going to write the damn list again. And I didn't realize that kind of obsessive thought was anxiety. It didn't present, because I would come across to everybody as I have got everything under control. But underneath, fatigue as well, because of the obsessive thoughts. That I didn't realize was an anxiety symptom, that one of the ways of dealing with, of judging whether or not someone has anxiety. There obviously there's the physical things like palpitations and blood sugar instability, but there's a lot of way that anxiety presents. And I was incredibly surprised when I went on a retreat a few years ago, where they basically pinpointed the reason that everyone was at that retreat was because they were in overwhelm. And I was like, are you crazy? Like, I'm someone who can have a 3-year-old and build a house and run a business. And then I had to sit there and go, yeah, you're right. I'm massively overwhelmed. And so I think if we are able to all come to some level of understanding that fear can absolutely control us, anxiety, we all have it, and overwhelm is, again, endemic. If we can have some honesty around that and stop the pretending I'm fine, everything's fine, I've got everything under control, now we can have some honest conversations around it.
I love how you and I have been doing this for goodness knows how many years, and we've been together 20 years, and yet we can still, I love how passionate we get about it, because it is just such an important subject. I'm also conscious that we talk for an hour.
I know, we do easily. So
how, if someone is interested, how would they know more about self-parenting?
Self-parenting, we actually have done, firstly, there's an anxiety talk on our website that is a new talk that I've just done, and I'm really, really proud of it. So check that out on balancewellness.co.uk, anxiety talk. We teach the self-parenting methodologies in our online program, Reclaim Your Life, which is 12 hours, and it is glorious. We talk about anxiety, we talk about fear. It's just all this self-parenting and self-love, like give yourself a big hug.
And it's something you can do at home as well. That's the glorious thing about the online training, is that it's modules that you can work through. And if there's one that, like, if fear and anxiety is really, you're in it, then you can stay with that module and work through that homework and work through that module. And included in that support is contact with us, so that we can help, work through. There's a Facebook group that we've got called The Hub, which you can join if you do the Reclaim Your Life program.
So please get in touch, because we really want to make these lives very useful for you. So get in touch with us, DM us if there's something specific that you want us to embellish on or talk about. And yeah, I think that's it.
See you next week, yeah?
With your Elton John glasses on.